The day that you plant the seed is never going to be the day that you enjoy the fruit. How many times have you started something and then completely just threw it away because you weren't seeing the results that you wanted to see? You allowed the numbers to discourage you and dictate your commitment to it without even realizing that good things take time. The day that you plant the seed is never going to be the day that you enjoy the fruit. So we have got to get out of the mindset of expecting this instant gratification and getting frustrated when we don't see the numbers, right? The numbers are just a byproduct of your effort. Eventually, the numbers will match up. But some of us have been so discouraged, right? Even in the things that God has told you to start. Maybe He's told you to start a YouTube channel and you started posting your first couple of videos and you're not getting as many views as you hope. Or maybe you're not getting any views. So now you're like, oh, I must have heard God wrong. I cannot do this. I'm frustrated. I'm just going to pick something else. But the question that you have to ask yourself is, have I even given myself enough time to see the fruit? A few weeks ago, I sent out my email newsletter and the title was, You're Giving Up Too Easily. And what I felt the Lord was pressing on my heart is that many of us have been starting things and getting so discouraged and distracted by the numbers. We've been so obsessed with seeing the immediate fruit that we are literally getting distracted by numbers, right? Numbers do not dictate your obedience. If God has told you to start something, then that means He has already seen the outcome. God's never going to cause you to do something where you're going to be out here embarrassed, but you cannot allow your emotions to dictate how you move. There are going to be times where you start something and you're not going to see the numbers in the expected time that you thought, but it doesn't mean that you're on the wrong path. Some of you even right now are comparing yourselves to other people, whether it's online or in person, and you're like, oh, they've gotten so much further than me. Oh, I might as well not even do this because they're doing the same thing as me. But the reality is, how can you compare your day 5 to their year 5? We have to get real with ourselves, and this is something that I had to deal with. I was getting so frustrated comparing myself to other people and wanting the results that they got, but not being willing to put in the work and endure all of the obstacles and the resistance that they had to face. It doesn't matter who you see online or who you see in person. Whoever you are admiring their success of has had to endure discouragement, trials, resistance, failure, things not working out the way they wanted. But the difference is that they endured. And endurance is not a word that we like to hear. We don't want to have to endure through things, right? Just because God has told you to start something doesn't mean that it's not going to come without resistance. I talk about this all the time. The enemy's job is to steal, kill, and destroy, and he does not want you to make any momentum. So the moment that you begin to start, of course, you're going to be hit with warfare and resistance because he does not even want you to produce that thing. Right? But we have to stop getting so discouraged by that. And one of the number one weapons that the enemy uses to get you discouraged is comparison. You think that you're not doing well, but not doing well compared to who? If you were only looking at God and what God said, then you wouldn't be so focused comparing yourself to anybody else. Even people in the kingdom, right? Kingdom people are not your competition. I don't care if God told you all to start the very same thing. Everybody in the kingdom have a purpose and we all work together. We're all put here to take influence and authority over certain spaces. So if you see somebody and it's another believer doing something that you're called to do, you should be excited because the kingdom is advancing. Right? There's no competition. It doesn't matter how quickly they're moving. If God called you to do it, He said He will bless the works of your hands. But your job is to endure and to not get distracted. And I'm not just telling you this to jump on you. This is something I've literally had to walk through in my own journey. I struggled heavily with anxiousness, discouragement, and even comparison to the point where I would just completely just stop and move on to something else because I felt like I always needed to be doing something new, fresh, or innovative. But there's nothing new under the sun. Even when it comes to this YouTube channel, God told me to get on YouTube January of 2023. And I remember I was thinking like, I was watching all these videos about how to grow your channel. Even though my background is digital marketing, I knew that I wanted to grow at an accelerated pace because I wanted to do well in what God was calling me to do. And I remember I was doing all this research and I felt like I was doing all the things and I was not seeing the results and the timing that I wanted, right? I would see people whose channels would blow up in the first 3 months months or the first year that they started, and I would be posting videos consistently and then be like, well, why isn't my channel growing like that? Why, is so-and-so growing so much faster? Just being completely distracted, right? And there were moments where I would just be like, ugh, are you sure you called me to do this, right? I already feel like I'm so behind. There's people who have been on here for years, and I was just entertaining all of this negative self-talk. And God had to remind me, like, are you here for the numbers or because I called you here? And it was a real heart check for me because everything that I want to do, I want it to be successful. It's a natural desire of my heart. But sometimes we can start to measure our worth by the numbers, and our worth is not in the numbers, right? Our worth is in our identity in Christ Jesus. And that's something that you really, really have to focus on. And so once I just had that heart check, I said, okay, you know what, Lord, I'm just going to focus on what you called me to do. I unfollowed everybody that I was comparing myself to, and I just focused on producing and being consistent. Right? I believe that effort plus consistency equals results. If you continuously put in the effort and you're in alignment with what God is doing, then eventually you're going to see the results and you're going to see the fruit. And that is proof in my own life. Literally for an entire year, I posted 1 to 2 times a week consistently. And I remember there were moments where I was getting irritated. I was getting distracted. My views were not getting any views. You can actually go back to a video that I made around that time about, overcoming discouragement when you don't see immediate results. That was literally what I was living. I was doing all of the things and I was still not seeing any results. At that time, I was probably at like 258 subscribers, and I'm using the numbers as an example because I know that this will make sense, right? I was at 258 subscribers around like last year in March, and my goal was just to get to 1,000, right? To get to 1,000 and to be monetized. And I remember I had been doing this for a whole year, posting consistently, creating the content, doing all the things that I need to do. And it was November, and I had only grown maybe about like 400 subscribers. And I was so irritated because I was like, Lord, all these people have been talking about how they got to 100K in a year. What is taking so long? And then it just came to a point where the efforts that I had been putting in met the grace of God, and things just took off exponentially. But you know what's crazy? I was putting in the same amount of work for an entire year and didn't see the results until the grace of God began to elevate what I was doing. Same amount of work, same strategy, but the grace of God completely took it over. This is the point where I started reaping the harvest of the seeds that I had been planting all year. I didn't see any proof that what I was doing was working, but all of a sudden that fruit began to ripen. I began to see the results. So let me give you a breakdown of the timeline. January 2023, God told me to get on YouTube. I started making videos consistently around March. From March to September, I couldn't even get to 1,000 subscribers, right? All of a sudden, in December, I hit my first 1,000 subscribers of 2023. Then I got monetized 2 weeks later in December. Then in January, I went from 1,000 subscribers to 10,000 subscribers. January 15th, I went from 10,000 subscribers to 20,000 subscribers. And here we are now. It's March when I'm making this video and I'm at 30,000 subscribers. What is the point of this? The point is not the numbers. The point is to emphasize that consistency plus effort equals results. A lot of you are right in the middle of what God has called you to do, and you're getting distracted because you're not seeing the fruit. But the fruit is not your problem. Focus on your consistency and know that you are in alignment with God, and you will see the results. It's not that you're doing the wrong thing. You're just not giving it enough time to mature. We talked about endurance earlier, and I know that's something that we don't really like to say, but endurance is a part of life. And that word endurance means the fact or power of enduring an unpleasant or difficult process or situation without giving way. Or in other words, sticking things out even in the face of obstacles. There are going to be times where you experience mental warfare. There are going to be times where you don't have the ideal setup or equipment to get started. It's about enduring through mental warfare, right? Enduring through the times where you don't really have as much time as you would like to dedicate, but you have to do it anyway. It's about enduring past the fact that you may not have all the equipment that you need or the perfect setup. None of that matters. Just focus on what God called you to do and be consistent. And when I say be consistent, I'm not just talking about for 2 weeks, right? I'm not just talking about for a month. You need to be consistent until you see the results. Stop putting a timeline on the results. Allow God to do that. You set your goal, you set where you want to go, but the results will come with time. That's just what it is. Now, I do want to give you 2 pieces of advice if you're in that place where you're feeling discouraged and you're trying to push past those moments of wanting to give up. The first thing I want to tell you is to kill instant gratification. You have got to focus on the long-term goal. You've got to focus on your why, right? Why did you originally start this? What is the thing that God told you to do? What is the purpose of all of this? Focusing on that will help you to get through those times where you're feeling discouraged. In Galatians chapter 6, verse 9, it says, "Let us not grow weary in well-doing. At just the right time, we will reap a harvest of blessing if we do not give up." How do you expect to see the results if every week you're giving up or every month you're giving up because you're not seeing what you want to see? You have to give your fruit time to ripen. But the moment that you stop putting in effort, the moment that you stop being consistent, you're taking away your chance to ever see your fruit. Put your why somewhere that you can see on the daily so that you're reminded of where you're going. The next piece of advice that I want to give you when it comes to overcoming discouragement when you don't see the results is to lock in. What it means to lock in means to eliminate anything that is a distraction from where you're trying to go. So for me, it was unfollowing anybody that I was comparing myself to. Number two, I stopped telling people what I was doing, right? I just kept my head down and started producing. I got rid of social media for a while so I could just focus, and I started producing at a rapid rate. And the biggest thing is I eliminated my excuses. There was a time where my schedule had gotten really busy and I had all of these responsibilities, but I still wanted to maintain my content creation schedule. And so I got rid of the excuse of being tired or feeling like I didn't have enough time. I made time for what was important to me, and what was important to me is what God had called me to do. So I made the time. I produced and recorded the videos when I got home from work and I was exhausted. I edited when I didn't feel like it because I knew where I was going. So whatever is distracting you, eliminate it. Lock in and focus. And I promise you that if you just keep your eyes on the Lord, if you keep your eyes on your long-term goals, you will start to feel so much more encouraged because you know that eventually your consistency plus your efforts will produce results. Galatians 6, 4 and 5 says, "Pay careful attention to your own work, and then you will get a satisfaction of a job well done, and you won't need to compare yourself to anyone." When you lock in and just focus on what you're doing, you're going to receive that satisfaction, just like the word says, of a job well done, because you'll only be focusing on you. It's you versus you, not you versus everybody else. So eliminate that need for instant gratification and then lock in and eliminate all distractions in your life. And I promise you, you'll start to see those results. And you'll also start to feel better about yourself, right? Comparison is the thief of joy. But when you focus on what you are doing, you're receiving the joy from your own efforts, right? You're receiving the blessing of just being able to work in the grace of God. It's such a beautiful transformation that happens when you just stop comparing yourself to everybody else. Your time is coming, and it's not going to take as long as you think.